I'm going to say File, Place. I'm going to select that file, and I'm going to click on Place, and it's going to ask me where I want to place that image on my artboard. I'm going to click, and there you can see that it's going to be on that artboard. Okay, so with regards to color, I'm going to use my little eyedropper tool to do that. And you can see that if I click on that specific color, have a look over here with my fill, I can eyedrop and you can see how my color changes. I can also double click and I can select and see what that color looks like. Okay, so eyedropper tool, and I want to use a specific brown, and I'm going to click and you can see that I change that color. So what I want to do is obviously save that color, is click and hold, drag it over to my swatches window. You can see there's a little plus, and I'm going to release. Now I can keep on using that brown color as long as I've got my file saved. Well, let's have a look at rulers. So I want to have rulers on my artboard so that I know that I'm working straight. So I can go to generally view rulers, and I want to show my rulers. So I'm going to view at the top, rulers and show rulers. You can see my rulers are popping up on the side and at the top. So how to create a ruler is you are going to click and hold and drag from either the top or the bottom, depending on whether you want a horizontal or a vertical ruler. So first off, I'm going to create a vertical ruler. I'm going to click, hold and drag, and you can see there's a line coming through, and if I release, it's going to give me a ruler. Second one, horizontal ruler, click, hold and drag it and release. So this means that I've got two rulers over here. Now I can't move these rulers or these guides unless I right click on the ruler and say unlock guides, and now I can move my ruler again to where I want it to. Now for my instance, I would like to have my ruler in a specific place, so I can click on my ruler and I can say transform, and now I can say the X and Y where I want that specific ruler. So you can see that I'm going to put in 10, and my Y, now I'm obviously looking at only my Y axis. It doesn't really actually matter where my X axis is. So at the moment it is from 0 81 millimeters down. So let's say I want to take it to 290, 290, and you can see how that ruler jumped from over here 81 to a precise 290. Same with this one. If I want to change it, so I'm going to click on that ruler, I want to say transform, and now we're working on our x-axis. So currently it's at 27. From 0, if I want to move it to right side, I'm going to say, let's say 200, and you can see how it jumped from here to there. The issue is that if I select that ruler, it's still going to change. It's still going to move. Now I'm going to say undo and undo again, which is on my side Command Z. On Windows would be Control Z. And I want to stop the rulers from moving. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say lock guides. And you can see now I can't move my guides anymore. Why do we want to do this? Well, let's say you are designing something. I've created 3 separate circles over here without any stroke, so I have to put in a stroke. And let's say I want to align these ones specifically. You can obviously use the Align tab. Now let's create a ruler. I can align them. You can see how my little ellipses, they snap onto that guide. I can either do it like that, or if we had something like this, we are going to use Align. Now let's again review our Align tool. It's always going to align to the, if you align to the top, your vertical align top, it's going to align to the uppermost item. If you align it to the left, it's going to align it to the most left item. Okay, so let's align it to the top. Again, everything's going to align to this item because it's the highest. So align to the top, boom. I'm going to undo. If I would have said align left, it would have aligned to this left of that specific item. You can see, boom, right there. Now let's try something else. Align center, so vertical center, so that would be something like that, and obviously it takes the average of everything and aligns it to the center. Now the other thing that we can do with align is we can distribute our items. So let's say I have 3 nice circles. Now we will be using this when we do our buttons, so I'm going to copy and paste. Now I think I'm going to quickly go over this one as well. So if I want to copy and paste, I can select my item and I can right click and I can't right click, it doesn't work like that. So I can say edit, I can say copy, and I can say paste, which means that it's going to paste at random on your artboard. We don't want that. It's just easier if your stuff is going to be aligned to have them aligned already. So the easiest way to do that would be to edit, copy, and edit paste in place or paste in front. So I use paste in front. It's just easier. So it works the same way as we did with our layers. I can paste it in front of the item that I selected, or I can paste in back, which means I paste it behind the item that I've selected. So I just generally use paste in front, which means that now that item is selected, I use my little arrow keys on my keyboard and I can just move it around. So the shortcut for this would be Control C on Windows and Control F for paste in front. And if I want to move it precisely to the right, I hold in Shift, I click and I drag to the right. You can see that it gives me a precise middle over there. If I wanted to just copy and paste it, it would be Control C and Control V to paste it anywhere at random. Okay, so I've got, if I want to select all 4 of these little circles, again, we're going to use this when we do buttons. We can change it around. So let's say I want them to face vertically. So what I'll do is I can rotate. So with my selection tool, I'm going to click, hold and drag over all 4 items, and you can see there's a bounding box. I'm going to hover over to the one anchor, and you'll see instead of that, as we said in a previous video, that I'm going to increase the size, I'm rather going to rotate. You can see that these arrows, they've got a little rotation on there, and I can rotate them. Now I specifically want to rotate them to a certain degree. So if I hold in Shift, I can rotate them at 45-degree angle. So then that would be 90 degrees. Now what I want to do is I want to distribute their centers, because obviously at this stage they are randomly placed. So I want to have them selected. So click, hold and drag so that I select all 4. And I'm going to distribute them, their centers. And you'll see if I click it, it's going to give them the precise space between each other, that they are the same, they distributed the same. Now again, if I wanted to have the center, I want to know precisely where the center is. You can see how I drag a guide so that I can see that those centers are correct. And I want to keep it like that if I wanted to align something else to that as well. Let's say I have that. I'm just going to, okay, if you want to delete your guides, you can right click, you can say unlock guides, and you can click on that specific guide and you can just press backspace. But you can lock your guides again. But let's say for instance I want to keep my guides, but I don't want to see my guides all the time. What I do is on a Mac it's Command and your semicolon. It would just be Control on a Windows, or you can do is hide guides or show guides, same thing. So that's how you basically design something. Okay, Now let's use our pen tool. Now pen tool is going to be the most used tool in this whole course. So it's really good practice to know how to use this tool and to use it well. Okay, so I'm going to start off. First off, to create a straight line, and this is very important, you click and release. So if I click and release, you can see I've created one anchor point over there. I'm going to just move my mouse to wherever I like, to where I'm going to click and release again to create an anchor point. So click and release created that anchor point. And as many times as you like, you can see every time I click and release, it creates an anchor point. Now, one extremely important thing to remember when we are going to be designing is to close your design. So you can see how if I move over to my first point of my design, my pen tool has a little circle down there, which means that it's a closed system. So you want to click and release, which means I'm done and I've finished with my design. I'm going to select my selection tool, which means that I've done and I'm finished with my design. Now you can see that if I click off of what I've just done, I don't see anything. Now the issue with that is because I haven't selected a specific stroke. Now I have to select a stroke color, or I can go to the default stroke, which is down here, which is default stroke, fill and stroke, which is a white fill and a black stroke. Okay, so that is your general idea of a pen tool. So I'm going to go through this again. I'm going to select my pen tool. Very important, you click and release, first one. Then you can click and release, click and release, click and release. Now you can see that these are only right angles. Now eventually we will be going through and creating gradients. So those are only right angles. Right, so this is where our direct selection tool comes in. So you'll see with my selection tool, I've got the whole object selected. With my direct selection tool, I can actually go and select each individual anchor point, and I can change it. So this means that I don't have to design whatever object it is perfectly the first time around. I can edit it afterwards. Okay. So let's get to more usages of the pen tool. So if I want to create a curve, I'm going to firstly click and release like we've done before, and secondly I'm going to click and hold, and while I'm holding I'm going to drag my mouse to how I want my curve, or what degree curve I want, or where the curve should go. You can see that I'm changing my curve. When I'm happy with my curve, I can release my mouse. And again, I'm going to select my selection tool. Now you can see I've got a curve. What if I want to change that curve? This is where the direct selection tool comes in. So direct selection tool, I'm going to select my last anchor point, and I can change this, what they call a handle, and I can change my curve afterwards. So this means that I don't have to do the curve precisely on the first try. I can change it afterwards. This is very important, is again you have to click and release. So I'm going to do this again. So I'm going to click and release, go to where I want to go, and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag my mouse to how much curve I want. Okay, so this is the first way to create a curve. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to show you a second way of creating a curve. This would be, I'm going to click and release, and I'm just going to have a straight line, and I'm going to click and release. So, and to stop that line, you can see that it just wants to keep on going unless I close that off. But I want to stop, or just want a straight line. So I'm going to click on my selection tool, which is a shortcut V, which means that I'm done with this specific tool. I'm going to zoom in. Now obviously this is a straight line. How do I create a curve from a straight line? I'm going to go and I'm going to hover over my pen tool. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to say I want to add anchor point tool, and I add a extra anchor to that specific line that I've just created. So you can see my anchor points would be this one on that edge, this one in the middle, and this one at the edge. So how do we create a curve? Well, I'm going to select the middle little anchor point that I've got with my direct selection tool. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag it to the apex of my curve. Okay, so again, I'm going to click on that anchor point I've just created, and I'm going to drag it over to the apex of the curve that I want. Then I'm going to again open up my little submenu, so click and hold. I'm going to go to anchor point tool, and I'm going to click on that anchor, and you can see I'm creating a curve. So I don't want a random curve though, I want a uniform curve. How do I do that? Well, you're going to click and hold, and while I'm dragging, I'm going to hold in shift so that on the right and the left, so otherwise on the right and the left it's the same curve you can see there. If I don't do that, I'm going to create a curve that's not correct. So hold in shift, and I'm going to create a uniform curve which gives me a perfect curve. Okay, so again, if I would have used my delete anchor point tool, I'm going to delete that anchor point. It's going to be a straight line again. That's the general idea of pen tool. So again, one thing to consider, this is very important when we are designing, you need to close your system. So I'm going to click and release. I'm going to do whatever I want to create the little design, but I always have to close my item. Why do I do this? Why do I say that you have to close that item? Well, let me give you an example. I'm going to give this object a fill. I'm going to select my pen tool. Now you can see if I do this, you can see that every time this color, it almost deletes the section where they overlap. That's random, right? You can see how it deletes that section where it overlaps. Now this is an extreme case, but I find with students it happens quite often where we design something and it doesn't look quite right. Now you can see that in this instance I haven't closed off my little object. I've only got an outline on the edge of this object and not on the inside. And my color is always going to fill from the beginning to the end of my object. So if my object was over there, do you see how it goes from the beginning to the end of the object, cutting out this whole section? So what happens if we close it off? If we would have closed off this design or this object like so, I've got my stroke all around and I don't have any pieces that's cut out. Okay, so let's say I have designed, and this is generally how I like to design. I think it's a easy way of doing something. You design a template. I'm going to give you a template of a model, and you are going to trace this model. But you just have to trace half of the model, because if you have a look at a general body, mostly, I mean, I'm not going to look at any perfections. I mean, I'm not perfect anyway. So if I would have cut myself in half, it would be pretty much the same, my left and right hand side. Okay, hypothetically speaking. So this is the same thing that I want to do with my template. When I eventually do this, we will get into detail of how precisely to do this, but we can reflect our design so that I only design half of my template and reflect or mirror basically the second part. How does that work? Well, let's say I've designed my little object. I'm going to select it with my selection tool. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say transform. I'm going to reflect, and I'm going to say preview. You can see how my preview gives me a precise reflection, 90-degree depending on what you put in there. And I'm going to reflect that little part that I've selected. I'm going to say copy. If I don't say copy, it's just going to reflect the selection or the object that I had, and I don't have a double one. So I want to always copy that selection. You can see that now I've precisely that same one. If you want to move it to the side, you can click on that. You can hold in shift and it's going to go precisely to the side, or you can select that little object and with your right arrow key on your keyboard you can just move it to the right or the left, or whichever you need. And you can see that my right hand side is a precise reflection of the left hand side. So that's an easy way of doing all of the work half of the time. Only half of it's all of the work, but you just do half though. It's an easy way. Okay, so that is it for this video. In the next video we will actually start designing on a template, and we can start doing what we are here for.